Right, Steve.
I think so.
Let's hope so. If not, you're somebody who looks very much like you.
I feel very prepared. You?
Yeah. Same. So we approached it in the same spirit that we always approach it.
Yeah.
So you said to me the other day, I said,
actually, Brett, you said we need a subject.
Yes. Okay. Well, yeah. If we're going to go back to all the things we said before, you said to me, why don't we do?
Yeah.
And then, why don't we do hope and despair?
Yes.
Which I thought went well together. Although initially, because I've had to think about this now.
Oh, right.
Because
I've been thinking about hope and despair, so if you're going to change it.
No. I've been thinking about hope and despair too.
Oh, right.
That's what I'm saying. I'm not saying I'm thinking about another subject. Thinking about hope and despair. When you said it initially, I thought, that's a great subject. I said, great, I like it.
Yeah.
And then I thought, so what exactly would we talk about? How would we frame that? And I wasn't entirely sure. Some of these things just come to you. And some are a bit more difficult to pin down. Initially, I saw this as a little bit more difficult to pin down. And I saw them as I thought, well, we often link things, like grief and loss or, anger and forgiveness, things that are closely linked. Now, I know hope and despair are linked.
Yeah, I would say.
Definitely linked. But a lot of them would see them as polar opposites. Whereas, say, a lot of the things we talk about, one leads on to another.
Yeah.
They're very closely related rather than opposites. So that's the first thing I thought about. And then I thought, hold on a minute. And I started thinking about it. And I thought, hope and despair, why do you find this difficult to pin down? Because I think actually, hope and despair kind of underpin our entire interaction with reality.
Okay.
Everything we...
That's a big statement, John.
Oh, yeah. And I really thought about this. And one thing that sprung to my mind was the Shawshank Redemption. You watched the Shawshank Redemption?
This is a real curveball now, John.
You haven't watched it? Have you watched it?
Have you watched Shawshank Redemption?
People haven't watched Star Wars. This happens.
Yeah, but okay.
So you can't presume.
From an age thing, I suppose.
Yeah, so always one of the greatest films of all time, and a great film. And in that, I just thought, interesting enough, we were talking about hope and despair. And you got Andy, who's the guy who comes in who hasn't killed his wife but is still sentenced to life in prison. And you got Red, Morgan Freeman character, who's been there for ages. Yeah. And kind of, in a way takes him under his wing and narrates the whole film. And they have an interaction in that film I was thinking about when Andy says, he's talking about music. They put him in the hole, the prison cell, for broadcasting Mozart to everyone.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And he comes out and they said, how are you? Because, it's not very nice in the hole. He said, it was the easiest time I've ever done that. Like, oh, yeah, whatever. He said, no, I had Mozart with me. They're like, what? He said, yeah, because he's in here. I was like, so he's saying that he's...
Are you about to shoehorn the Cornermen band in? I had the Cornermen song.
Not at this juncture. At several junctures in the conversation, yes.
We're setting it up.
Not particularly this one, yeah. So, I could have used the Cornermen band. But so Mozart, and he said, and then they were like, what are you talking about? And he said, well, it's the feeling that there are places in this world that aren't made of stone. There are places that are better than this. There are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he culminates with, and there's hope. And Red looks at him and says, hope. Hope can drive a man insane. He said, forget about hope. Hope doesn't exist in here. And he's quite angry at him for bringing up that idea of hope. So the one thing I thought about that was really interesting. They're in the same situation. Those two characters are in the same situation. They're in a horrible prison where lots of, they're existing under a tyranny with lots of random brutal things happening to them. And there is no prospect of getting out. But one of them is approaching that with a level of hope. And I want to improve my situation. Yeah. I'm still looking forward to a time when I will be outside of this prison. And the other one said no. And he actually says, later in the film, says, I can't afford to hope. Hope will drive me insane. So I've abandoned hope. I mean, it's like that famous thing above the gates of hell in Dante's Inferno. Abandon hope, all ye who enter here. So it's almost, for Dante, the abandonment of hope was the definition of hell. But
I had to have a kind of, when I read that book, I had to have this thing that interpreted it when I was doing it.
Yeah.
Just as a side. If you're ever going to read
try and get it in English instead of Italian then.
Yes, you're still in English. I had to
you always make things hard for yourself.
Sorry, yes. The
hope. So hope. And also then I was thinking about despair. So I thought that was very, there was lots to talk about hope. There's lots to talk about in hope. And then generally we see hope as the positive thing and despair as the negative thing. But, they are so closely linked because it's almost like a dashing of your hopes leads to despair. An excess of hope leads to despair. Despair is always there. It's like these two things that kind of colour our world and work in tandem. There's almost like a pendulum swinging between them. It's getting the balance right. And this is what I mean about, you saying hope and despair. I'm like, okay. And then I started thinking about it. I thought it covers everything. It encompasses everything. And when I say it's about almost defines our interpretation of the structure of reality, I'm reminded of Shakespeare. See,
You're going for it.
I've got the Shawshank Redemption in. I've got Dante in. I'm going for Shakespeare now. Just going to chuck that in.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is that. But there's a great quote in Hamlet where he says,
Hamlet?
I could count.
Honestly.
Yeah, but that's covered under Shakespeare.
Okay,
you
fair
can't
enough.
really
fair enough.
bring that into. I could count myself the king of infinite space, but that I have bad dreams. So it's that idea that it's not where you are, it's what you think, it's what you're thinking. So,
interestingly, that in that scenario, I didn't thought about it at all, but when you're talking about, is it Red and Andy?
Yeah.
One's formulating a plan. One's trying to inspire himself. So he's constantly thinking, I need to plan.
Yes.
One hasn't planned. It's just reliant on. But that was just a thought that kind of sprung to my mind there.
I think that's very true. Yeah, I mean, obviously, it turns out in the end, doesn't it, that Andy, and a spoiler alert here for anybody who hasn't seen it, is tunnelling out and is doing this tunnel kind of constantly. The time is through that he's in there, which gives him, obviously, you don't know that. No, but so there is kind of a surprise ending at the end of the film, even though all prison films end with people getting out of prison.
He's trying to find a way out of his despair.
Yes, and that kind of gives him hope, and the things that he clings to give him hope. He doesn't kind of acquiesce to the hopelessness of his situation, the despair of his situation, which is manifestly evident in everything he bumps into. Yeah, because
one of the things I always, it's difficult for when, obviously we've heard despair a lot this week. We've had quite a bit. And when people are talking of despair, they've got a very good argument for their despair.
Yeah. There is a very strong argument for despair.
So it's a really powerful thing.
Yeah, I mean, there is, and I think this is the thing, there is often an argument for despair in this world. It's like hope is almost the magic.
If that was what I think, if you finished about why I thought
I've only just started.
All right. I despair at that. No, well, you finish off what you were saying, and then I'll just explain where it came from for me.
Well, it leads on to a lot of stuff. Yeah. But I suppose all I was trying to outline in there was that when you initially said it to me, I was like, hope, despair. Yeah, it's a bit basic. Maybe we could pad that out. And then I started to think, as soon as I started to think about it, it just went boom.
Oh, okay, wow.
And it was like, it brought in so much stuff. So I won't go on, because I'm sure lots of the things I've thought about will come in this conversation. Yeah. So at that point, normally I would say, you have come up with this subject, can you open for us? But I've already opened by saying, wow, actually that's really that. As soon as I started to think about it, it blew my mind.
Oh, good. Because I've not.
But I will pass it back to you now and say why did you come up with that?
So I haven't thought about it as deeply as yourself, I have to admit, because we're obviously trying to find a subject. And it only really came to, because there has been some people, particularly this week, I don't know, some weeks just are darker than others for people, and sometimes you get people that lots of people are feeling good or lots of people are feeling down. But just we've heard it, despair. People really talking about being in despair. And then we also obviously try and find, our job is to try and find some hope, and often that's linked to formulating a plan or. But what has struck me, and I think I said, was that there's an internal despair that people have, but. At the moment in society, or whatever you want to call it, there seems to be a lot of despair, and there's a lot of angry people shouting. There's a lot of angry men shouting at us for a lot of, and that there doesn't seem to be a lot of hope. Where are the figures saying, right, there's some hope here? It's all fear, and I think that's causing, or I suspect, or might be wrong, especially. That it's causing a wider kind of despair within our communities, but there is also hope, which I'll touch on later. But
I think you're right. I think what I see is generally a vision of despair, and what people are saying to me. And I funny enough, we had a discussion, with a good friend of ours, Matt Potts, who had a great discussion about. He had it in Wallingford Town Hall, and he said, how do we come together in an age of polarisation? So he was talking about, which I think was justified. We seem to be more and more at polar opposite ends of the scale, and on all sorts of issues. And one thing I sort of brought up in this discussion was, I think what we lose sight of is that a lot of the time we all want the same thing. We have different ideas about how to get there. And I use the example of Brexit, which I think was had a magnifying effect on those polar extremes. And if you look at the polar extremes of Brexit, for example, you had some people saying, if we have Brexit, we'll have a wonderland where we can, our economy will be boosted. It was largely an economic discussion, and everything will be wonderful, and we'll be able to go out into the world, and we'll be able to trade freely. We'll be away from all these laws and rules, and all this sort of stuff. And other people have said it will be an absolute hell in a handcart if we leave. We're best off in, and everything will fall apart. If we go outside, we'll be lonely and isolated. And everyone else was along a spectrum between those two beliefs. But if you drill down into that idea and say, what do these people actually want? What they all would say they wanted was a better economy, a strong community, good schools, and access to good schools and services for them, their children, and their community. They want a future, hopefully a future that has more opportunities and wealth for their children and then their grandchildren, and a safe, secure, and stable environment. What they differed was in how they wanted to get there. And I think a large part of the problem is that we now perceive the other person. So the person who wanted Brexit was saying to the anti-Brexiteer, am I getting this the right way around? Would be that you're going to wreck everything. The way you want to go is totally detrimental to our community and our society, and I think you're going to make us worse off and everything's going to fall apart. And the same was the vision backwards. It wasn't like, I know that you want a better community, and I know that you want to be better off, and I know that you want lots of things, but we have a different way of interpreting how to get there. And I even think that, one of the examples that was brought up there in that discussion was the climate change thing. And again, you have a spectrum. You have people who say there is no problem. There's absolutely nothing going on. There's no problem at all. The world is more productive than it's ever been and will continue on that trajectory for quite some time to come. And you have other people who say man-made climate change is dooming us all, and it's probably too late to do anything about it, and we're all going to fry. And most people are along a spectrum between those two views. But even the people on the opposite end...
Both sides are very good. When you're arguing about despair, it's compelling. So when both sides are arguing and telling their point, they can do it very, very well. And it spreads despair.
Let me finish this point. I'm probably overdoing it here. But what I'm saying is that both those people on both the spectrums of those arguments, nobody wants the world to die. Nobody wants, everything turned to ashes. They actually want, things to survive and thrive. They both want that. They differ about their interpretations of the data in how we're going to get there and what we're doing and what we need to do to propel ourselves towards, a good future. But what I'm saying is that people now look around and they say, so I would say these two people have competing visions of getting to a good place, but each sees the other as absolutely destroying the world. And so it's almost like everybody's coming up against this vision of despair. Nobody's selling a vision of hope, particularly. I don't see that. Nobody's selling
I can't think of someone.
Roosevelt's New Deal. Nobody's saying, listen, what they're saying is, I'm trying to stop you ruining everything.
Yeah.
So, everybody's saying that in the climate change debate, in the Brexit debate, in the immigration debate. Each side is saying, you are trying to destroy everything and I want to stop you. Yours is a vision of despair and annihilation at the extreme end. But they're all saying that to each other. But nobody's really saying, I have a great vision that's going to really improve us. And I think in a way, this is why we're arguing so much. Because if I'm saying, you're bringing a vision of despair, I need to stop you, and you're saying the same thing to me, while we're fighting,
not listening,
neither of us is really listening to the other, and neither of us really has a vision of how to make things better. We're talking about not making things worse. We're not really talking about making things better. So I think it's like there's so much despair all around.
But also the opinion I would have of the other person is that they're, basically evil.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. And so it's, and that's why, for I think I went to some really good meetings last week in Dichotomy, and the hope is going to come. We need to work together. All the charities getting together. It's community. I don't know. I sometimes think we think too big.
Yeah.
And we want the governments, but actually it's how we are in our local communities.
I think what I took from that talk the other day, and the word that kept coming up to me was community. Community is the key.
Yeah.
And it's like I say, whether you're pro or anti-immigration, what you're after is a strong, vibrant community. Whether you're, this is what you want and need. Yeah. Is that is all those support networks, even though you might not call them support networks, to feel safe and secure and prosperous and able to pursue your your goal of happiness within your community.
Yeah.
And that's what you want. You don't want to be...
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So, so that was really why I wanted to, it had been occurred to me this week. I don't, just that I've been hearing in the daytime from individuals about hope, about despair, and then just really thinking, and sometimes that feeds what's going on externally, feeds into, because there's no, what hope is the world's fucked, what hope is there?
Yeah.
I'm fucked, the world's fucked. What's the point?
See, that is a point I often see on social media. You see people saying this is bad, needs to stop, this is bad, needs to stop, in whatever configuration. And then you get the other sentiment that is chucked about, I'd say you probably see it 10% of the time. This country's fucked. This is all, the world is fucked.
Yeah.
This is all over. There's no point. It's all done. You see that despairing comment thrown about quite aggressively, but it's like, what's the point? It's all fucked. So it's not.
And it's really competitive because there's lots of evidence for that argument.
But lots of people are saying things are getting bad. We should stop this happening. Which again is a vision of not going to your. I don't want to go to your vision of despair. I want to stop that.
Yeah.
So it's not a positive vision, but it's still like we need to do something about this. Whereas this country's fucked. Is like, where are you going to go with that?
It seems to me all sides say that. Just
I've got to stress that. I'm taking a neutral observer's point of view here on every single one of these debates I'm talking about. I'm watching the debate because I'm interested in hope and despair. I'm not making a comment on Brexit. I'm not making a comment on immigration. Not making a comment on climate change. Not expressing my opinion on any of those issues. I'm saying both sides
that's it.
Look at it this way.
If you're in between, you're trying to decide, well, that says we're fucked, just in a different way to that side.
Yeah, because I would like to think that I am the guy, not saying I'm sitting in the centre, but I am the guy that says, listen, I disagree with you, but fundamentally, I think we want the same thing. I think if we drill down, we want the same thing. We want to get to the same place. We want this happy, wonderful community that we can live in, that's safe and prosperous and our children will thrive in. That's what everybody wants. I don't believe I'm talking to someone who wants to turn the world to ashes, either deliberately or through their own stupidity. I don't believe that. And that's what gives me hope. But that's where I'm coming from. I'm not expressing an opinion. I'm just saying that maybe I think we lose sight of that sometimes.
Yeah, I think absolutely spot on.
Yeah.
And people can do it to themselves.
Yeah. And I think it was really interesting what you said about people come in with this despair. And they just it's like everything's there's no point, there's no point and there's no way to change this. And you said that's often combated by a plan, by putting a plan into place to say, right, well, what do you want to do and how can we achieve that? And I think also often hope is a motivator to action. And I was talking about this being not really an interpretation of the world around you, of your reality, but an instigator in you changing the reality around you. If you have hope, if you have a plan, you actually do go and change your reality. Like for once, I had hope that I could start a boxing club.
Yes.
And that I could make a living out of starting a boxing club, and I could, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that hope led to a series of actions and steps that brought that about into reality.
Yeah.
So without that hope, because a lot of people said, that's a really crazy idea.
Yeah.
You're going to put a boxing club on a farm in the middle of nowhere. Yeah. What do you think's going to happen? I'll tell you what's going to happen. Fuck all. So a lot of people said that, or would have said that. So that was the vision of despair, that you would simply lose some money and just feel a bit foolish.
Yeah.
And the vision of hope was that no, enough people will come and it will be all right. And so 20 years down the line, it's worked.
And I think people are scared of hope because there's that chink of light, and what if I give myself hope and it goes, I'm going to feel even worse. But there's a kind of you've got nothing to lose then, is to kind of
that's kind of hope on the road to despair, isn't it? And you don't want to, and that's read in Shawshank Redemption saying don't hope. Yeah. Because it will just, like I said, it could drive a man mad. Not in here.
And I think that's part of, if your hope is in something, if you're trying to do something for yourself, so like say you form a plan for yourself to get to do like you did with the boxing club, like Andy does in Shawshank, which we seem to have cottoned on as a good example. It's it's if you give the power over to someone else, that I think despair has a bigger part to play, Because if we're talking about the analogies, people are wanting governments to do something. We're saying, well, we're better off forming plans as a community and getting on with it. That will give us hope because we can actually do things locally and start doing stuff, doing actual stuff that helps, And it's a bit like with ourselves, which is, if I give them if I need someone else to do something, I'm powerless. But if I start taking because I only, when jokingly aside, but when it's the hope that kills you, I get that in the context of an Arsenal fan. Because they should be winning things, and I hope they do. But it's completely out of my hands, and the hope that kills you. It's not. It's something that's out of my control. There's different types of hope, I think.
Yeah.
And
there are definitely different types of hope, but I think there's a hope that's a motivator to action where you think I could do this. I can see almost a chink in reality where I can go for it and I can do something and I can try. And that can be applied to all sorts of things like a boxing match. You're going to go in and you're going to hope you're going to win and all that sort of stuff. But I think there is also another type of hope, which is almost, I would call it more a mystery hope. So let's say you've been told that you've got, a terrible form of cancer that's completely incurable. You have a number of months to live, or a loved one of yours has that. You would then still hope. You would often still hope that something that miracle is going to happen. And where do you put that faith? And where do you ask for that miracle? But then you're heading into the teeth of despair. If that doesn't happen, aren't you? So is it wise to hope then? But you do hope because there are sometimes miracles. There are miracle remissions that can't be explained. So there is some sort of hope, and there's always that phrase: where there's life, there's hope.
I think it's comfortable to not hope because I'm here. I'm in this. I can let me deal with this. I can kind of deal with the despair, and if I start to hope, it's too painful. So I just want to remain in this kind of despair.
Yeah. I think in that mysterious hope, which I'm making up words now, but I'm talking about that mysterious hope. Whereas it's just like a hope that isn't really rooted in a particular plan of action. It's just a hope that's rooted in a hope that something's going to happen. That it just will something mysterious will happen, and that led me to thinking as well about. It did lead me to thinking about the cross.
Okay.
And I thought the image of the cross, and I was thinking about that as an example. When we talk about hope and despair in life, and we talk about that pendulum swinging, and I was just thinking about that. So I was thinking about the image of Jesus on the cross. So a very common image, you see it around a lot of people's necks. You see it, every time you go into a church. If you go into a church, you'll see it, or most churches. Yeah. I've just come back from Ireland, so a very Catholic country, so you'll see a lot of that. Yeah. And I was thinking about what that image is, and also you're almost compelled to look at it. For example, when you go in the church, you're compelled to look at it because it will be up by the altar. And, often, you're Catholic, you will cross yourself going into the church. So you're compelled to look at that image. And what is that image saying to you? Well, that image is the ultimate image of despair.
Yeah.
So that is despair encapsulated in one image. Because what it is an innocent man, a completely innocent man.
Like Andy in...
like Andy. I haven't seen that. But even worse than Andy... Because Andy, now remember, if you remember the film, Andy did go to, when he found out his wife had an affair, to the guy's house with a gun.
Oh, okay.
Now he didn't do anything.
Quite Christ-like.
He didn't do anything.
Yeah.
Because he realised, whatever, and he threw the gun away.
Yeah.
Then they were killed and he was convicted. But it maybe the wish, something in his head was saying, I hope they are, I would shoot. That thought came into his head. Now that's an example of someone, like all of us, none of us are free from sin, but Christ was supposed to be free from sin. So Christ would never have gone to the house, wouldn't have had the wife. But anyway, that's another discussion.
Well,
but
unless you read Last Temptation of Christ.
Yeah. So a completely innocent man who's been abandoned by not only by his community, by his friends, then persecuted by a tyranny in the Roman Empire that he can't escape, tortured, broken, publicly humiliated, left to die, abandoned and alone.
Dabbed.
Yes. So the ultimate kind of coming together of all the worst things that could possibly happen to you, and also it's almost like the removal of hope because there's no hope in your friends, they've gone. There's no hope in your community, they've abandoned you, they've turned against you. There's no hope in the tyranny because they've said, no, we're going to do this to you anyway. You've never done anything wrong ever to anyone. And yet all this is happening to you. So it's the ultimate in despair. But within that image as well is the ultimate in hope, because we know that what comes after that is the resurrection. What comes after that is, you know, the promise of eternal life. What comes after that is almost everything good. From everything bad and the despair comes everything good, the hope. And both of those thoughts are contained within that image, which I think is what makes it so incredibly powerful.
Yeah, I think that message gets lost. I think, you know, people, and I think like if I'm right, you know, it was the lawmakers and it was the people that pretty much got him crucified. You know, it was the people who weren't, you know, you're not doing it our way. You know, you're going to make
the people he was criticising, people he was criticising and pointing out their fallibilities. You know, rightly so.
But it just strikes me that
got him crucified by the authorities, by the tyranny they were living under.
Yeah, and I think it's a shame because I speak to different people. You know, my friends group is a vast array of people with different opinions, but you know, one might be saying that, you know, we're a Christian country, or that, you know, just Christian values, and actually they're not talking about Christian values. I don't like what we're talking about, which is there's come hope, you know, and some will be blaming the other one will be saying, yeah, it's because of with our country, they're because of Christian values. And I think there's a real we miss like, you know, culturally some of the, and even if you don't believe, some of the really nice analogies of what it signifies. It's kind of been taken into a children's story, and you know, it's a ridiculous book. It doesn't tell you about, you know, science. No, it was, you know, but people can do it with like myths, the Greek myths. People can do it. There's all, and we seem to have just skipped that. And I think we've lost a bit of actually what it means and what it can teach us just by only seeing it through a very narrow prism.
Yeah.
If you start talking to people about, you know, feeling despair, they can really empathise with that. They can get the story of the cross. But people often think, well, do I need to believe that happened?
Yeah.
You know, if you're going to be a Christian, then yes, you would. But if you want to learn something from the story, just hear it from that point of view. You know, and when you are in despair, think of that. You know, and so it just, I think there's a shame. You know, we're talking about our culture at the minute and who we are and our identity. You know, I don't know if we're sometimes arguing about the right thing.
Yeah.
You know, I think people are saying they don't know what the identity is.
Yeah. I think there's a lot. I mean, but I think
so I'm going to identity rather than despair now. But I'm despairing.
I think there's always been a confusion of that, and it's almost like Eddie Izzard said, you know, I kill you in the name of Jesus.
Yeah.
It's like, well, hold on, think that through.
Yeah.
You know, but there's a lot of that in understanding, and you know, and I'm certainly not going to say that I understand it either. But you know, what that Christian identity is, but you should understand some things and some things that undergird it. And it's a bit like Camus said, I don't believe, but I choose to believe. Albert Camus.
Who's he?
Oh, I'm shoehorning all these people. Now I've lost you now, haven't I?
Look, I was just explaining the story before we started that I got dug out for having a glass of wine in a restaurant last night.
Yes. What, a glass of wine for the lady?
Yeah. So, you know, culture is low in my background.
Yeah. So I don't believe, but I choose to believe. And that was encapsulated. I mean, Jordan Peterson said that as well when I asked, do you believe in God? I said, no, but I act as if I believe in God. So I act, and a lot of people do act in that way. It's like, well, do you know, why are you nice to people? Why do you go around, you know, why don't you murder, rob, steal, kill, you know, all these sort of things. I know some people do. But a lot of our underlying behaviour could be traced back to that moralistic vision of that faith. And I know a lot of faiths have similar visions as well. But anyway, I think we're getting slightly off track with hope and despair now.
Yeah.
So but I thought that image encapsulates. And I was also thinking, you know, why is that image so attractive? And I think that's so because there's so much in that. But also that idea of being persecuted, an innocent person being persecuted by the world, is something that almost everyone can relate to. Why don't things go right for me? Why don't I get what I want? Why do things I hope for? Why do the hopes that I have get dashed and turn into despair? Well, there's an image that kind of encapsulates that. But the beauty of that image is that it encapsulates the hope behind it. And so we still have that hope. And the danger, I think, is if you look at that image, if the image I just described to you before I said, and then the resurrection, if you didn't know the story, you'd be like, why the hell would you want to look at that? Why would you want to be reminded of that? Why would you, and it's like, but you can understand why people would relate to it, but it's with the hope behind the despair, and almost the despair leading to the hope. That makes it such a magnificent image that we do want to look at, and kind of keeps us going and keeps that hope. And like I say, there's that phrase that I do. While there's life, there's hope. Yeah. And there's a way to go forward.
So how do we get that message of hope out to people?
Yeah, well, how do we still, like I say, I mean, I do agree with you. I don't see leaders at the moment in this world selling a vision of hope, selling a vision of getting to a better place. And the wonderful thing about a vision of hope and a vision of leading to a better place is that people tend to follow you there. You know, if we're all stuck here fighting in the darkness, saying, look, I think you're going to make things shit, so I'm going to stop you making things shit.
Oh, yeah.
And you're saying the same to me.
Yeah.
We're kind of on a race to the bottom.
Yeah.
You know, because neither of us is selling a vision of hope. We're both trying to oppose a vision of despair, which is a different thing. So, I think we haven't got that person selling that vision of hope.
What it is, like I say, the flip this week has been going, I went to London for an event, which was a great word was used to describe us that was there, social entrepreneurs.
Well, I like that.
Yeah,
I do like that.
I'm going to have that on my LinkedIn now.
Yeah.
Social entrepreneur. But there was, people that are chatting to people that started great charities, and hearing their stories and meeting them and meeting people who want to help, funders who want to help, philanthropists, and also within Dichotomy, there's a big drive to get everyone that does stuff together and start talking and working together. So, there is that despair, but there is kind of hope if people out there are people in our communities really trying to, help and do things for their local community. And, if more and everyone can start doing that, we don't need to rely on someone else because it will come from the ground up.
Yeah.
It's it's a bit like, the analogy really, if we can use the Cornermen has come from the ground up, which is what I'm probably most proud about. It's not come from a load of services telling men about it. What we've found is men have gone told their GP. We've started without it. The guys have said, because they've told their brother, their dads have told their sons, and they've told their mates. And so I have services contact me saying, I've heard about your service, sounds great. Can you tell me more about it? So it's an example of, these things have been set up to try and help, but starting in your community and doing something, you can spread out and start affecting. Like the other week we were speaking in front of the suicide prevention conference in front of experts. Me and you. And it's great because we say it's not rocket science.
Yeah.
We just listen, and we're there.
Yeah.
And someone said this week, it's the care element. You know us.
Yeah.
You want to know how we're doing. I mean, that's not really hard to do if more of us did it.
Yeah, and as you say in that conference, and I'm sure they're needed, and I'm sure they're valid, and I'm sure it's good hard work. There were a lot of statistics, and there were a lot of jargon, and you wonder how. I wonder anyway, as a kind of layman. Yeah. Like I say, we were trying to say, look, it's not that complicated. Do this, keep it simple, do it right. Get through to people. But the statistics, I suppose, are needed for looking at larger trends or whatever. But some of it was a little bit antiseptic. I'm not sure exactly how this helps.
People, I think, and in defence, there's lots of extra.
Do you remember when I asked that one question about the statistics? I saw a strange curve in the statistics. I was like, just to me, that doesn't seem right. And so I asked the question of this very prestigious academic who'd given a wonderful presentation. And I said, I can't get that bit. That doesn't sort of chime to me with what I know happens. And she said, yeah, I know, it's weird, isn't it? Don't know why that's there.
Yeah. I think the problem with statistics...
She said, it's probably wrong.
And it's probably statistics. People like them, they want to know more, so you end up talking a lot about statistics. And, and as I think the good thing about the meeting I was at on Wednesday last week was, the people want to hear stories, and I think that's...
Well, they want to hear stories, but also some statistics, like I said, I'm saying we were blinded by statistics. Some statistics blow you away. Yeah. Because do you remember when Matt said 13 men a day in the UK?
Yeah.
He said 12 to 13 men a day in the UK die by suicide. And he said that's a football team plus a couple of subs. All of a sudden, you're like, oh my God.
Well, I nearly said, actually, Matt.
Yeah.
You can have 15 now. You just. But the serious point, and that's that statistic when you tell people, and then when but exactly the point. You hear that statistic, you can just despair, or you can go, look, the answer is not that complicated. Yes. We know that statistic. We didn't look at loads of statistics around Didcot about them. We just put a number out there and see if people wanted to talk.
Yeah.
And they came along.
Well, and so that's almost, as I was saying, hope as a call to action.
Yeah.
And hope as something that can change the reality around you.
And we've all got the power. Everyone can do something.
Yeah.
It's all within it. So the hope, is there.
Yeah.
What's your passion? You know, what do you want to, and then help.
Yeah. Yeah.
If we all do a bit of the puzzle,
Yeah.
jobs are good.
As Camp Maths, we'll go back to Math again.
Camp Math, I don't think you can call him that, John.
Math Potts.
Yeah, you can't call him Camp Math. He's quite masculine, quite macho.
Did I call it Camp?
Yes. Do you mean Camarado Math?
Camarado Math. I have to finish the word.
Apologies, Math, if you want
to finish the word. Camarado. Yeah. The answer to our problems is each other.
Yes.
Which I think is a great evocation of community.
Yeah.
And as I say, in that discussion I went to about polarisation, although some of it was polarised, what came across to me, what I took away from it was the answer is community. That's what people are seeking, that's what people are looking for, and that's what gives us the hope and alleviates
and you're
the
going to
despair.
have to get on with people you slightly disagree with.
Yeah, yeah.
Otherwise,
because at the end of the day, you'll probably find they're after the same thing as you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Well, there's our message of hope.
Yeah.
I think to
hopefully
end this episode 9.
Oh, yeah. Well done, John. You had a good think about that.
Yeah, I did. What is it?
Yeah.
It's kind of all this morning.
Yeah.
I was watching Neve play football.
Oh yeah.
And hoping they would win.
Yes.
But I ended up in despair.
Yeah.
But
like being an Arsenal fan, mate. Welcome to
yeah. But yeah, I was cogitating on it.
Yeah.
On the touchline. So yeah, I was really keen to come and talk to you about it.
Yeah, good.
But yeah, hope and despair.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, John.
Good subject.
Yeah. Cheers, Marky.
Cheers, Margie.